Welcome everybody. This is the Newcomers meeting. It's 12 December and we'll be starting in about a minute. There's a meeting minutes link in the chat. If you can't access that, please speak up and we'll get you access. If you can access that, please go ahead and add your names to the attendees list, or if you have any agenda topics, please go ahead and add them to the topics. Let me start. I'll add my name here and you can follow through. Fair warning, if you don't add your name, we'll be adding it for you. And unless you like funny spellings of your own name, I would avoid that. All right, we're 3 minutes in, let's start. We have this age-old tradition of making people introduce themselves on these calls. If you've never been on these calls before. And let's start. Who wants to go first before I start calling out names?
I can go first.
Great. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Keenal. I recently joined this community. I don't know what else you would like me to talk about.
Anything that you want to tell us? Your favorite color, what you worked with?
I'm a master's in computer science student right now, and I'm excited to contribute a lot in this project. Looking forward to meeting all of you. Thank you.
Great.
I have a quick share about Keenal, and that is that she doesn't boast about it, but she might be the only one that I know that has her first name as her her GitHub user. So like,
yes,
I'm not sure if being envious is appropriate or not. I'm trying not to be jealous. Maybe just envy.
I'm very happy about that though.
Yeah. I won't. I don't think you'll ever catch me asking you, "Hey, what's your GitHub username again?" You'll just.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's pretty neat.
That's great of you to notice that.
Well, that's because it's special. That's because it just doesn't happen all the time. That's the. Yeah.
All right. Who wants to go next?
I'll go. Yes.
Oh, all right,
Okay.
Sarthak, go ahead. No,
Okay.
go ahead.
Hi everyone. My name is Sarthak. Recently joined the community as everyone here, and looking very forward to contributing. Seeing a lot of cool projects here. I actually got to know about the community by my friend who was a CNCF intern this previous cohort of the 3 months. I currently just skipped my meeting at the MLS Fellowship. I mean, I attended half of it to attend it here. I said it's a newcomers meeting, I have to go. Currently, I'm contributing to Facebook's Talkisaurus there in the fellowship. It's about a week more of that left. I'll probably continue that there, but yeah, that's a cool project if anyone wants to contribute there also. It's open source, everyone's contributing everywhere. I found the project story really intriguing here, and I want to like transition into the DevOps field. So I thought that this will be a good learning opportunity for me, and actually applying what I learn as well as I go. So yeah, apart from programming, which pretty much everyone there is a programmer. I like photography. I click pictures a lot, and I'm also a theater actor. That's an interesting fact. If anyone's interested in knowing that, cool.
I am interested in knowing that, definitely. And
Oh yeah, so I represented. I've been to like state level theater acting in my college. I'm currently doing my bachelor's. I'm in my third year in computer science. So
nice.
yeah, I
Which
do
college are
that.
you
I'm in VIT, that stands for Vellore Institute of Technology.
in?
It's in India.
Impressive.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. I hope I see you in something. I have seen a couple of fairy plays.
Oh yeah, I actually wanted to ask. I don't know if this is the appropriate place, but like, so my friend who was contributing as a CNCF intern, he was contributing to Thanos, if I suppose that's right. But when I got the list, I think Thanos wasn't there. I think Thanos and Prometheus also use React and stuff like that for their frontend, the stack.
Yeah, that's a good question. So you said Thanos, and so for Prometheus, oh, wow, a while ago, and it still may be the case, they were using Angular. They had talked about, I gave a talk at a KubeCon EU, I think 3 years ago, on Prometheus, and a little bit on extending Prometheus, adding some new functionality in its, adding alerting and eventing capabilities beyond what it had. And I know it was Angular then because I added some new functionality, but they were talking about moving to Elm at the time. And I think the big consideration at the time was nobody's doing Elm. So that would make wooing contributors a little bit more difficult. But I haven't kept pace. Like for Prometheus proper, the UI, those engineers, I know all of the founders or the core maintainers very well. None of them, UI is like furthest from their mind. And so
yeah, my main concern was asking that question was because I saw that a couple of newcomers already started contributing to Mystery UI. So I thought they already have contributed, so I might, contribute to a project that needs some attention. I have no problem, since I'm starting new, I can contribute to anything.
Nice. Yeah. I guess speaking of where you might find an area of interest or where you might get some initial traction, Sarthik, do you have an innate desire to spend more time toward front end things or rear end things, back end things?
I know. I actually started learning Docker, so I really want to go towards the DevOps side.
Nice. Good. Okay. Enough said. Like there's a mile. There's a mile of things to do there. I'll go look for one while we're on the call. See if it's interesting.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, my earphone died. If you said something, I didn't hear that. Can you repeat, please?
Yeah. Good response. I always feel awkward asking people to put themselves into a box. Hey, is it front end or is it back end? And it's just an improperly phrased question. So more of a DevOps orientation. That's fantastic. There's a ton of need across the projects with respect to tooling and to interoperating with a lot of the other CNCF projects. So perfect. I'll go see if I can't highlight a couple of areas that might be of interest.
Yeah, that would be great if you can suggest anything that I should start learning or like contributing to. That would be awesome.
It's good to have you.
Nice.
All right. Thank you. Let's move on to the next person.
Hi, I would like to go first. I would like to go next. I mean, am I audible?
Yeah, Dashi, you're audible.
Okay. So, hi everyone. I'm Udeshi Singh, and I'm a student here, like final year student here at HBTU Kanpur, a college in India. I have been a Google Summer of Code 2019 contributor to FOSS Asia, and been around open source for quite a bit. I have decent experience in full stack development and have been learning DevOps recently. So actually, this community was suggested to me by a few of the old contributors which I knew, like Shiva Lamba and probably Kush. I have contributed with them. I have been to hackathons with them, so they recommended this community, and so far so good indeed. And in case Lee and everyone knows, I'm the one who has been having trouble with the OS. I'm that guy.
Yeah, we've got, I think, as a matter of fact, Udesha, I will go ahead and put your name into the attendees list. And, oh, actually it's there. I'm just gonna add
Yeah.
I'm gonna add your middle name, which is Problem Maker. Nice. But it's nice, fantastic. It's good, good to, anyway, it's good to hear like Shivai's name and Kush's name, to hear that other folks have convinced you to spend some time here. So this is great.
Yeah. So hoping forward to contributing over here.
All right. They said it wasn't solved, right? You couldn't.
About that, so I managed to find a workaround with Utkar's suggestions and a few of Anirudh. Like I had a call with Anirudh, so he did guide me. So far so good, but I will have to like tinker around a bit too to see if it keeps working like that. Keeps working fine.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. Who wants to go next? Yeah, you're audible. Go ahead. Srichand?
Yeah, so hello everyone. Myself Srichand. I'm currently pursuing a second year in computer science and engineering. So like my main interest is in Stack. So far like I've learned React.js and currently I'm doing internship in a company with React itself. So like it's been a good 4 to 5 months working with React, doing getting a bit of experience on React, and like I've done few projects using Mongo, Node, Express, complete one, and just hosted it on Heroku in like 2 weeks ago. So like I'm focusing like since I've worked a bit on React, I'm thinking to shift my focus on the backend and in the later stages the DevOps like Jenkins, Kubernetes, etc.
All right. That's pretty impressive. Have you had a look at any of the side projects? Any of our side projects?
No, not yet. I meant to visit those.
Definitely. All right. Let's try and show you some of the side projects on this call.
Yeah,
If
sure.
Ruth is still on, if she's not, let's see. Who's next? Tommy, do you want to go next?
Hello. Good afternoon. Good morning. Can you hear me? Yeah. So I missed my own I missed the last Newcomers community meeting. Kind of traveled. So told me I'm a 50 undergraduate student studying computer science with economics, and I'm a front-end developer with experience in design, user experience and design. And yep, I'm happy to be here.
Nice. We recently got your meshmate, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah. Sorry, did you ask a question?
Yeah, I did. We recently got you a
What?
meshmate, right?
Well, no, I didn't exactly get the measurement, but then like I have somebody assisting me whenever I need help. And his name is I've forgotten his name. It's a very long name. His name is Nikhil or something like that. Yeah, Nikhil.
Yeah. Why can't you just go by Nick? It would be so much nicer. I mean, look, Tommy, I mean, look at your name. It's 4 letters long. It's not that difficult to do. You can just abbreviate. I know, like, Anirudh is a good example. He likes to go by Ani. I know that because I've asked him like 4 times, and every time he said, no, it's really Anirudh. But that doesn't
He
stop.
won't. Anirudh is not shorted to Ani.
No.
All right. Anybody else who's with us for the first time? Amarachi.
Hello. Yeah. Can everybody hear me?
Yep,
Hello.
we can hear you.
Okay. So my name is Amarachi Sulaman. I'm not a student. I'm a self-taught developer, front-end developer currently, and I have interest in becoming a full stack developer. And currently, I have started working with Node, and I'm so interested in DevOps. I've not had in-depth knowledge about how exactly DevOps works. So I'm taking it really something and so that's why that's
Amarachi,
my own.
Amarachi, there is just an inordinate amount of feedback on your line. Try as we might, we really couldn't hear you. So if you would,
my charger, it's okay. Is it
yeah,
better now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Okay. Is it better now?
It is.
Yep.
Oh, okay. So I mentioned that I'm a front-end developer with interest in going full stack anytime soon. I've already gotten started with Node, and I also have some interest in DevOps. So I already took a few courses with on Go and Kubernetes. But I doubt if I understood a lot from them because I'm just getting started. Okay, and I'm pretty new with Meshi. I'm also having a few problems setting up the project locally. I don't know if it's okay to ask the question now, or is there going to be another window to ask the question later?
Yeah, actually, it's a good time to list down a couple of topics. So maybe a question that should pop into the topics list.
Okay, I'm just having problem setting up the project. I've not been able to clone it. I was talking with Roots, but then we've not found a solution yet. Uh,
Yeah. Very good.
I'm having an error message here. So, I don't know how to share the error message I'm getting. Would I'm supposed to send a picture, a screenshot, or share my phone?
Yeah, a screenshot would work. A screenshot
Okay.
of the logs, do you mean?
Okay. So I think this is the end of my introduction for now. I'll just send the screenshot, I think, to the chat, yeah?
Sure.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah. And Amarachi, actually, when here in just a little bit later on the call, maybe you could share your screen and we could walk through it. I think everyone would benefit from that. And that way we
Okay,
can.
okay. No problem.
Nice. Okay. We're taking that note in the topics. So good of you to mention it. Another quick, so if you can see the meeting minutes, there's another approach to collecting error logs as well, but we'll cover that. That's good.
All right. I'm very sure I'm pronouncing this wrong, but Ekin, please correct me if I am wrong. Ekin Ugviani. I think he left the meeting. Damn, I wish that wasn't because of my pronunciation. Hopefully he'll join back. And all right, that's enough of the intros. Let me give a general intro to the meeting and what we do here before we begin with the agenda. We take an hour every week to welcome newcomers into the community, get all your doubts solved, get you something to work on, get you started in any of the projects or the domains. We also usually give you a run through of either of our side projects or either on how to set up and run one of our central projects, Meshri, which is what we plan to do today. As well, if you're having issues running it locally in your system or getting it up or getting your dev system installed and ready, this is the meeting to speak up on. If you're having issues on finding a project or domain to work with, this is the best place to speak up. If you're having issues generally on how to get started in the community or in the projects or simply can't find on how to get started, again, this is the best place to speak up. You'll find mentors, you'll find people to work with here, and you'll also hopefully find either a domain or a project to get invested in. We also take a slightly informal tone in these meetings, so please feel completely free to speak up on anything, basically. And we do not believe in stupid questions, so go ahead and bombard us with any and all questions that you can think of. And Lee likes to give people names. Kindly, Lee, go ahead and add into those names or go with those. I'd suggest you to stick with those because those are not going to change. All right. That's it. Let's get started. I'll let Keenal speak about hers while I set up a little bit of while I start meshing. And that's it. Keenal, do you want to go first or Adesha?
Sure, I think we already talked about the issues that I had yesterday, I mean the questions. So I think Mr. Lee knows about them.
Yeah. So, by the way, Keenal, are you in Florida?
I am.
Okay.
Yes.
I embarrassed myself a week ago. Another newcomer had joined and I confused her with you. And I tried to make a joke about Florida and it bombed. So that's very good. But so to go into Keenal's, by the way, say it one more time. Enunciate your first name one more time.
Keenal.
Keenal.
Yes, it's like Keynull.
Nice. Okay. Thank you for that. That's actually, so Keenal had a couple of questions as she went to start to contribute to Meshri UI. And so not only is it a little easier maybe to speak to some of those, but to also do that here in this call. It's a perfect call for just acquainting people with, talking about how to set up your development environment for Meshery, or how to set up your environment, but maybe a little bit more on when you need certain environments versus different environments. And so just ad hoc here, I'm going to share my IDE. I end up using Visual Studio Code, but to each their own in terms of tools. And so you don't have to use Visual Studio Code is what I'm trying to say. So I'm just opening up. So I've here in my system, I'll increase the font a little bit. In my system, I have forked Meshery. I've opened up my local Meshery folder. And I'm sitting on the, I could type, I'm sitting on the master branch, or I'm intending to be. Anyway, I'm sitting on the master branch. And so so Meshery itself as a project in this repository, the Meshery repository, as a matter of fact, let me just share my whole screen real quick. And please, Anirudh or Ruth, or anyone else here that wants to interject with some ad lib or some additional context to what I'm about to say, please do, because each of you, or a lot of you on the call, Udesha at this point, a number of you, Tommy at this point, have gone through some similar things as to what I'm about to go through, which is just sort of setting up your environment. If you have notes to add, please do. Just interrupt. And it felt like it. Oh, nice. Okay. So one thing that's good to note about the Meshery repository is that it contains about I guess we'll see. It's 4 projects potentially, or 4 components that, when brought together, almost make up all of what Meshery is. Meshery as a project it's not sprawling. As a matter of fact, there's a number of us that have complained about the fact that there aren't more Meshery repositories, which is kind of weird because there's like, I don't know, there's like 25 of them or something for Meshery. And that's in large part because of the number of adapters that Meshery has. And but the Meshery proper repo, so to speak, this repository, of the 4 components that are in here, there's, well, my goodness, I guess there's about 5 components. There's there are 2 for the user interface. So the Meshery UI is what we generally just refer to the main Meshery user interface. Is broken into 2 user interfaces. One, and the main one that has the most functionality, is here in this folder, in the Meshery UI folder. Here, so it's React, it's Next.js. There's some Billboard.js in there as well. Billboard.js is for charting metrics. So you use that framework there. There's a collection of individuals within the contributors in the community that are working on a different JavaScript framework, Cytoscape.js. That framework is for really topological visualization, or to basically show nodes and edges, to show something of a visual topology of your infrastructure. So for Sarthik, just thinking towards DevOps, like the tool that's being built there is to visualize the infrastructure and let people and I guess actually, Amarachi, you also had been recently studying Docker and Kubernetes. So Anirudh is one of the individuals working on that project. At some point, he'll probably want to show that off. It's not checked into this repo at the moment. It's a separate project. So anyway, now that I've totally confused people, let me go back and just say some things succinctly. The Meshry repo has like 4 or 5 things in there. It has a UI component, the main one. It also has this initial provider UI. So if you've whenever you've started up Meshry for the first time, you get shown a very small user interface for choosing a provider or choosing a system to authenticate to. And there are a couple of choices. The default choice is Meshry. And so to create an account or to authenticate to your existing account, you just choose a social provider and sign in. We'll talk more about providers another time. But suffice to say, those are the 2 UIs. That was the provider UI, that little login screen, that's the provider UI. All of the rest of what you see here in Meshry, all of this functionality falls under this directory, the UI directory. There's a small command line, not small, but there's a command line client called Meshry CTL that each of you have no doubt started to use as well. It's written in Go. That command line client just compiles down to a single static binary. So just by static binary, we mean that you can take that single file called Meshry CTL, it's just a file, and all of the functionality of that client is contained within that single file. So it's just the Meshry CLI. It is a client of the Meshry REST API. And so Keenal, as you've gone to work on some features and functionality in Meshry's UI, a lot of times you'll interface with Meshry's REST API. That REST API, sort of the entry point to that API, is under router. There's a file server Go. Even if you don't know, not just Keenal, but anyone who doesn't know Go, you can still come to quickly understand what this single file is, server Go. It's a collection of all of the REST endpoints. So you'll see a bunch of Go gobbledygook, but you'll see these /API /something, so usually /noun. So this is where clients like the Meshry UI or Meshry CTL, generally those clients will interact with Meshry server, the core functionality, through these REST APIs, through these REST endpoints. Actually, it just so happens that the one that I'm highlighting is generally referred to as mesh sync. Mesh sync being the idea that Meshry, as a management tool, a tool for managing service meshes and interfacing with Docker and with Kubernetes, that Meshry needs to be continuously in sync with the infrastructure and all of the changes that are going on in the infrastructure. And so we refer to the capabilities behind this API, we refer to that as mesh sync. So just a synchronization of information between the infrastructure and the management plane, or between Meshry and the infrastructure. So cool. So that's what that's about. So there's the client component. That's one. The provider UI, the main UI. That's a couple more. And then there's the documentation, just the Meshry documentation that you can, some of you are visiting and finding a number of bugs within. As a matter of fact, you can see a bug right here. So this set of content under the docs folder, it's all of what you see here in this Jekyll-based documentation site that runs on GitHub Pages. all of that content is stored under docs. And so it's just a Jekyll site under here. But if you, there's some sort of documentation specific contribution flow here. Okay. Lastly is the rest of the folders. If I'm remembering correctly, the rest of the folders are mostly comprised of Go, and they are what make up Meshery server. So wow, we digressed into all of what those components are, because what we were trying to do is say, okay, you've got, oh, and I guess what we also didn't talk about is the fact, I mentioned the fact that Meshery has adapters. All of you should have access to the community shared drive. It's a Google Drive, has a lot of resources in it. It has a blank slide here, which is not intentional, but it has a lot of resources. And one of those is a set of slides on Meshery's architecture, just logical, it's logical architecture. So we were just talking about Meshery's REST API, the fact that there's a Meshery server written in Go, and the fact that there's one adapter for each type of service mesh that Meshery supports. So 9 and counting at the moment. Each of these adapters are written in Go, and depending upon what you're working on, you may need to either just build the Meshery UI component, or you might want to be building the Meshery server component. Maybe you're making a new API, and maybe you need to be running one or more adapters. And so it's fairly commonplace that you'll need to run both the UI and the server, to the extent that you're trying to affect a piece of functionality or a behavior. Sometimes it's just the UI if you're moving some components around.
I'm sorry, can you just say something? So we're talking about how to run Meshery, and that's good, but can we just back up a little bit and talk about what Meshery actually is? So I know it has to do with microservices, and when we are talking with the services, is that when we need to use this? Like, what is the purpose of a service mesh, basically?
Yeah, it's a good, so I'll say this, there's a short report on, or a short book on answering just that question, basically. That's free, and the second edition just published. All of you are welcome to it. Remind me, and I'll put a link to it in the Slack. So to the extent that it's somewhat short, it's only so painful to read. But to answer your question, Keenal, it's the, holy hell, this is such a dangerous question to ask me. I will talk to you for an hour on this. To be as concise as possible, yeah, I think you're hitting it on the head, that as microservices have taken flight and have become the predominant way to approach modern software architecture, microservices have become popular probably because of Conway, because of the need for speed, because of Conway's law, because you want your teams to move faster and be decoupled from one another, to iterate quickly and deliver functionality fast. When they do, most often the shape that a microservice takes, a lot of times takes the shape of a container. And if you're doing anything meaningful, you end up with a lot of containers, and pretty soon you've got container sprawl, and you need an orchestrator, and you're running something like Kubernetes to help you manage a bunch of nodes or servers that are running your containers, tracking the health of them, and when do they get scheduled, and when do they get rescheduled, and how much resources are they consuming, and which ones need to be stay adjacent to one another, have a strong affinity, or which ones need to have an anti-affinity. Just like all kinds of sort of lower level concerns about how do you form a cluster, run your compute, interface with your network and your storage. And so Kubernetes and other orchestrators like it have only gotten so far into addressing all of the distributed systems needs that happen when you have even just a simple front end app and a backend app, a front end container and a backend container that when a user visits that front end, almost every time the back end is implicated. And so almost every time that the user pulls up the page, there's for a single interaction, like if I refresh this screen, it would be like for a single interaction, the network would be implicated. So the front end would make a request to the back end. Turns out the network is fallible like all of the other infrastructure that you run. And so it's not guaranteed that your request would make it there and would come back, or that it would do it in a timely fashion, or that this thing is even up. And so, well, what do you do when you can't reach the database, you can't reach the backend? Do you know if it's down? Should you retry that connection one time just to make sure, or should you do it 3 times, 4 times? Should you stop doing it because you've got like 5 replicas of the front end and they're all trying to hit the back end, and now you're just retrying a bunch of times and overloading it? Or like there's a very, very long list of unaddressed concerns that become fairly painful in a distributed systems environment, or in an environment where you're running a lot of containers. And so service meshes layer down in those types of environments. They've become quite popular because they give you a lot of additional observability, and out of the box. And by observability, I mean a lot of additional metrics about how many requests are being made, at what speed, whether or not those were errors or not. What was they give you metrics and logs. Service meshes facilitate distributed tracing. Service meshes give you a ton of control over the traffic for use cases like resiliency, like I was just saying with retries, but also for security, to make sure that you've got that if you bring on that front end and back end onto a service mesh, that most meshes will generate a unique identity for each of those services, so that each of them can identify one another. And in context of a service mesh, you can control which ones are allowed to speak to one another. When they do, you can say they need to mutually authenticate, since they're part of the same trust domain, the same certificate authority from which identities are being generated by the service mesh, that communication can be encrypted or not. And so just like the short of what I'm trying to say is, my goodness, there's a lot of like the proliferation and the popularization of microservices has made a number of these other concerns even harder to address, because it's not just the compute containers that are ephemeral, but it's all of the rest of your cloud-based infrastructure. Networking is difficult. And most developers and operators, like those 2 personas, a lot of those folks have never physically touched a switch or a router or network gear, and don't focus on that. And yet they need to be empowered to programmatically control networks and networking. And they shouldn't have to build all of those concerns into the app. You shouldn't be writing into your app, oh, if you make a request to the backend and it fails, go ahead and retry. You shouldn't, or as things progress and move forward, generally, if your role as a developer and you're trying to build out functionality to generate a thumbnail for this image here as an example, you wouldn't want to spend your time writing that retry logic. Rather, you just say, well, there's a service mesh running. I'll just configure it to, or somebody else will, or I will configure it to do 3 retries. Part of our project is to say, like, oh, good Lord, like service meshes are, they themselves a big old mouthful, and just trying to manage and grok all of that is pretty difficult. Moreover, there are 20 something of them that this community tracks here. This gets referenced a lot by people in general. And so then So as someone says, well, I think I have all those pains, and it's not just that service meshes only work in context of containers. Service meshes, some of them work with services that are running in virtual machines or that are running on bare metal systems. And so people come over and say, well, okay, well, great. So which one should I use? And then how should I get started on it? Like, what should I turn on first? And by the way, what basically the same question that you're asking, which is sort of like, why do I need it? And is it really gonna help me? And so, and also, that was a lot of things that came out of your mouth. If your infrastructure and if the service mesh is gonna give you all that functionality, isn't it going to incur some overhead as as that system itself runs? So like, which one of these is lightweight and runs quickly, or which one of these has a ton of power but has a little more overhead? All kinds of questions that people have, and things, tooling that they need empowered with. Those questions that I just said are questions that Meshry as a project is trying to address, that we're trying to help people adopt service meshes initially, and then ongoing operate them with confidence.
This was very helpful. Thank you. I'll also take a look at the book too.
Nice. Yeah, good. So yeah, very good. And so yeah, maybe last word on that is that briefly, some folks will, I think, be myopic in their thinking. They'll be too short-sighted to consider the value of a project like Meshry. They will they'll look at it and say, oh, it manages multiple service meshes. Well, I'm not running multiple service meshes, I'm just running one. So, thanks, but I don't need that tool. And the way that we present Meshry, we need to make sure that we're changing that messaging a little bit, because the fact that it manages more service meshes than any other project or product in the world is cool, but that's not its core value. Its core value is answering those other questions that I was just asking, which is, if you're running Istio and no other service mesh, great. You can use Meshry to analyze your environment and tell you where you're doing it wrong. Or maybe if you see a lot of greens, where you're doing it right. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Cool, yeah, good, yeah. So Keenal, to briefly for everyone else, there's this fairly long makefile in the project that lets you run or build and run in those individual components that we were just kind of talking about. So one of those is to like make Meshry CTL to build that small command line client. It's really like, and by the way, this probably needs to be improved, but it's these various commands that you're using already to build and run the project. And so, yeah, I would say that the two that are probably the most commonly used are actually, I think, the two that you were highlighting, which is this: if you execute the command make run UI dev, that will execute these commands right here. So it'll build the UI and run a local web server to let you test out your changes, and it'll sit there and listen for additional changes. So if you make changes in the components, it'll recompile or rebuild quickly and show you. The problem is, if you're only running the UI and you're not running the server as well, you might be working on a piece of functionality that needs the server. And so, yeah.
If I make if I'm running both run UI dev and the server, and if I make a change on the UI part, then will it also get updated on the server side too?
That's a great question. No. No. as a matter of fact, there's, I think also to further that question, there's like another easy point of confusion. And that is, actually, this is a point of confusion, I think, even as I go to describe it. That's that if when you build the server, if you end up running, if you do make run local, so Meshry server itself gets built. So there's some Go commands that fire off to build the project. And it's a little bit of a point of confusion to me. Actually, Anirudh, maybe you know off the top of your head, when you do make run local, is it the case that we are only building the back end? That we are, the reason I said,
you're only building the backend and so answering the question, whenever you run the server gets static data, which is built by yarn build, right? Or npm run build, the build UI. So the build creates a build folder, and that build folder is consumed by the Meshry backend, which is then showed to you from the server's UI. And when you run npm run UI dev, that is basically the yarn, we could say yarn start or npm start or npm run dev. So that is a continuous renderer which actually checks for changes in your local files and renders those pages on real time. So that's the difference between using a production build or a build UI or a dev UI. So the Meshry backend renders the build UI, and then you have to run, like if you're working on a UI task, then you'll have to work on run UI dev, which is the dev build.
Okay, thank you.
Anirudh, could you please repeat the last one? What did you say? If I have to like run, if I have to make sure like it's just local development, so which command should I run it precisely?
So if you're working on UI, you have to run npm run UI dev. So that is npm run dev or yarn start, whichever you'd prefer. So it's a run UI dev. Make run UI dev. It creates a dev instance which actually renders the page multiple times. So if you're refreshing a page, it builds the page and then shows you the content in real time. So as you can see in Lee's terminal, you see the build page is being compiled multiple times, right? So if he re-renders the page, it'll rebuild the UI and then show you the changes. And in case you make some changes to the files, those are also looked upon, and then the changes are shown on the UI. That's why you don't use build UI, you use dev UI for while working on dev changes.
Got it. Thanks.
nice, all right. Keenal, did we totally kill your question?
No, I think I got it.
Okay, cool, good deal. Back to you, Shruti.
All right. We only have 4 minutes to go, so I'll skip the rest of the agenda and ask for any questions. Does anybody have any questions? Or do you want to find something to work for? Any project to work in? Any domain to work with? Or if you want a mentor and you haven't been assigned one already, you can speak up here.
Yeah, so I haven't finalized a project yet, but I was thinking Meshry UI. Do you have any other suggestions, or should I just go ahead with that?
Tell me a little bit more about what you've worked with or what you want to work with, and I'll give a better.
So I've worked with React, so basically MERN, anything I've recently learned Next.js. So yeah, probably since Lee said it uses Next.js as well, so that will be great. Apart from that, I'm looking to you to learn Docker Kubernetes. So if anything is in that field, but anything that's React based or JavaScript based, it's will be easy for me to begin with. I mean, I shouldn't have any issues with that, hopefully.
You're looking for React-based projects, you will have two options here. Either you can go with Mesh UI or you can go with one of our side projects, Layer5 NG. Most of the
Okay.
work done there is based on React, and the site runs on a platform called Gatsby, a framework called Gatsby.
I have idea. Yeah.
All right. So if you're looking more towards working with a side project, go for Layer5NG. If you are looking to work more towards Docker or get more familiar with that side of things, you can also get involved in Mesh UI, or maybe try out both, and whichever one feels or whichever one sticks, go with that.
Cool, makes sense. Thank you. I'll probably start with Layer5 and we'll shift to Mesh UI then.
All right, that makes sense. If you were doing that, we have a meeting or a websites call on Monday, which you should really join.
Cool,
It'll be a
I'll
great
join them.
start, yeah. Okay. All right, looking forward to seeing you on that one. You'll hear me speak there as well. Sorry about that. Anybody else?
I had a problem yesterday where I was getting this error. It was no valid Kubernetes configuration found. And you told me that we'll talk about it on call. It has to do with Kubernetes system.
Yeah. Which OS are you using?
Windows.
That shouldn't be happening on Windows. What kind of a cluster are you using? Is it a Kindi cluster? Is it a Minikube?
I was just trying to work on the PR assigned to me, and then I was not able to see the page at all. I'm not sure why.
The page. Do you mean the Mesh dashboard?
No.
I have a little bit of context here, and that is to say that as another step of setting up your anyone's development environment, that Meshry interacts with Docker and interacts with Kubernetes so much that that it's pretty commonplace that you will also need to have access to a Kubernetes system while developing features. And it sounds a lot more daunting than it is, but that's something that we can walk through to make sure that you've got a local Kubernetes cluster. Cluster is a big word, but to have Kubernetes deployed locally, there's a couple of solutions to that. I know we're at the top of the hour here, but I have time to hang out and to Keenal to kind of walk through that with you and make sure that your environment is good to go. But Shri, I know that excuse me, that I know that may not be interesting to everyone, so I wouldn't want to force everyone to hang out. So Shri, would be okay if to help answer that question, if Keenal and I and whomever wants to hang around, spend some time installing Kubernetes while everyone else.
That's completely fine. That's totally your call. We could also maybe take it up in the next Meshry meeting if you don't want to spend time right now. It's a problem a lot of people are having at the moment. Could be a viable thing for the entire community.
Yeah, maybe a rehash there. The thing is I don't want Keenal to just twiddle her thumbs over the next over the weekend. I want we need to get her going.
All right. Yeah. Then now's good. Keenal, are you okay with that?
Guys, I'll drop out.
Sure. Thank you for joining in.
Yeah,
Same time
I'll
next.
drop out. Nice talking to everyone. I'll probably join Monday for the website meeting, and I'll look over the repository for the issues, and I'll probably set up my dev environment till then. Thanks,
Great.
guys. Great talking to everyone. Yeah.
Great. See you on the websites call, and if you want to join back for this one, same time next week. Also, if you're looking for the Layer5 NG repo, it's a branch on the Layer5
Yeah,
repo.
definitely. If I had fun, if I have time, I'll join for sure.
Great.
Sorry, I didn't get the last. What?
If you're looking for the Layer5 NG site, code base. It's a branch on the Layer5 repo instead of being another repo. It's by itself. That's a little confusing for some people.
Okay, I think that was in the Google Doc, right? I can just follow the link from there.
Perfect.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night.
All right. Thank you for
Guys, I
joining in,
would be
everybody.
dropping to.
Yeah, anybody who wants to leave can do the same.
All right. Good night, guys.
Bye.
Keenal, I guess I didn't even consider to ask, do you have time to go through setting up Kubernetes now?
Yes, we can do it right now.
All right, okay. Let's see how fast we can go from 0 to Kubernetes. So to familiarize with your environment a little bit, you said you've got a Windows machine,
Yes.
a Windows laptop?
Yes.
All right. And the Docker that you're running, or rather, Docker is installed on your system, right?
Yes, it is.
And do you know how is that Docker desktop or is that?
Yeah, it's Docker desktop.
Okay. Nice. Then this might actually happen fairly quickly. Would you mind sharing your screen and maybe we'll sort of work off of your system?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
I can do this one.
Yeah, now you have to find oh, you found it. Okay.
Yeah, there's so many tabs open that I have to decide which one to click on. Okay. So I was running this and it was getting run here. Okay, what is my first step?
Oh yeah, okay. And so since you're running Docker desktop, it's probably, I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed, but I think this is gonna be, this might actually just be one mouse click. That's how simple they've tried to make it. So if you cruise over to your Docker desktop install, might be in your system tray.
If it's not, just search for it in your start menu.
Will you want me to open just Docker desktop?
If you would.
Yes. I'm actually trying to do a boot my laptop so that I can have Linux too.
Oh, okay. Nice. Yeah. Last time I did that, I wiped out the wrong partition.
That's why I just placed an order for another hard drive so that I can put Linux on that one and not mess up the Windows one.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so this is Docker desktop. You can see it, right?
Yeah. Are you able to navigate to preferences? It's kind of a weird spot, but.
Preferences here or in my laptop?
On your settings, the settings icon.
Okay.
Yeah, then go to
preferences.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's actually called settings here.
Okay.
And you're right. You're like your Kubernetes, that last menu item. Yeah.
Just enable it. Apply and restart.
So Docker desktop will go download the Kubernetes bits, or download Kubernetes. It will initialize it in a set of containers, or it'll initialize it in the, in the same virtual machine that's running for Docker. But it'll spin up a number of other containers. So a containerized Kubernetes deployment that will deploy a single node, and node being like a logical representation of a server. So anyway, it'll deploy a small Kubernetes environment that that you'll be able to immediately interact with using Mesh3. Couple of concepts to start to get familiar with here, and that is that Kubernetes as an application has a config file that Docker it'll be trying to make it easy on you, so to speak, by doing some things behind the scenes, just as it's doing now. One of those things should become prevalent in your shell. So I don't know if you use PowerShell or.
Yeah, I do.
While we're sort of waiting for the bits to download and start, if you want to pull up a PowerShell, let's see if we can explore a bit to get you comfortable. Okay, and so I don't know that this next command will be available right now, or it's part of what's installing, but the command kubectl.
Is it cube with K?
Yeah.
Kubectl.
And yeah, and it might not there. But by the time that Kubernetes is downloaded and starts, oh yeah, there you go. So so this is the command line interface for interacting with a Kubernetes cluster.
Okay.
If you do cubes, just to sort of futz around while waiting for it to come up, if you do kubectl version.
Do I need the hyphen?
No.
Okay.
It should try to give us two pieces of information, and actually it is giving us two, which means that, so it's saying, hey, your kubectl, the version of kubectl is 1.19.3, and the version of the Kubernetes server that's being installed right now is also 1.19.3.
Done installing.
And so, from there, just to maybe two other things to do. There's like three things to do to familiarize. So if you do kubectl get pods.
Get what? Sorry?
Pods, like a pod, P-O.
Like that?
Yeah. It will say there are no pods running, in this namespace, which is perfect because you just installed it, so there's nothing really running. The other thing to do is I was just saying, hey, that the way that Kubernetes as an application works, it has a configuration file. That configuration file by default gets deposited into your user's home folder under a hidden folder called .cube. So if in PowerShell, if you try to change directory or cd into .cube, and and if you do that one more time, but drop the /, just all right, and then very good. And so there's our config file. It's just a text file. If you cat that out or print it out or whatever you do in Windows, it looks like a bunch of nonsense, but it's actually relatively short. In essence, it's just saying, hey, you can use kubectl, that command line client, to interact with a bunch of different Kubernetes clusters, but your configuration file, it just has an entry for one cluster, the name of that, and each cluster would be a context, like, hey, which context do you want to interact with? This cluster or that cluster? Since you only have one and they named it Docker Desktop, so your cluster is called Docker Desktop. And every time that you run a command like kubectl get pods, kubectl that command line client, it will every single time it will reference the config file and say, all right, what's the current context that you want to use? And so it's like the 5th line down under your, there's one called current -context. It's just right down.
Right.
And so it'll say, what's the current context? Oh, Docker desktop. Okay, how do I connect? Oh, I use that big long client certificate data and the client key data like that. It'll use that to go ahead and authenticate to Kubernetes and then invoke commands like get pods. And so this file that we're looking at, this config file, well, there's the password, so to speak, that we can hand to, okay, or so when Meshry starts up, it will look to this standard location for how to speak for what Kubernetes you're using and what credentials to use to talk to it. So if we cruise back to Meshry, and if you simply refresh your screen or like click the logo or something, yeah.
This is the one on the server side though, so will it still work?
You'd be surprised. I think if I'm understanding how you're running your system, if you click on the logo, like the Meshry logo in the upper right-hand corner, and if you do a refresh again, so yeah, so I'm not understanding how your system is run. So
Let me try running the other one. Sorry, there's this panel here, well, for Zoom, and it keeps on coming away. Oh, yeah, this.
yeah, that Zoom panel gets in the way. The alternative quick answer. Oh, okay, yeah. If you. So these guys, the adapters, the service meshes, they will probably continue to say configure settings, but if you go up to the gear icon in the upper right hand corner, the settings icon, that's now on the environment tab, the leftmost tab. There's 2 sub-menus here, and we need to, as a matter of fact, this is potentially something for you to work on, as you get more and more familiar, is that there's sort of 2 modes of deployment, 2 models of deployment of Meshry. Okay. One of those being that you're running Meshry outside of the Kubernetes cluster, which is what you're currently doing. The other one is, oh, hey, you just deployed Meshry as an app inside of Kubernetes, just like any other containerized app. So if you click on in cluster, oh no, oh yeah. So actually I forgot I'm supposed to be in a different meeting. Thank you, Anirudh. I'm gonna jump real quick. This is the last step. If you go to out of cluster deployment, and where it says upload kube config, you'll navigate to that hidden folder and upload your config.
The config file?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. If you could add in just a small sound every time that happens, it would just be like, that would be ta-da! Like like when Mac OS starts, just a little ta-da. All right. Cool. I am being horrifically rude. I didn't realize I'm supposed to be in another call. So I don't know if there's anyone else that wanted to chime in and kind of talk. Oh, actually, maybe this is that. I don't know.
But
so,
I still don't see something like this on mine.
Oh, yeah.
That's.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Try installing, go to settings. Go to service meshes. try select that little arrow thing. Try.
Oh, yay. Oh, yay. I'm going to clap.
You could really just use the sound instead. Oh, yay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. No, your pain has just begun. It's only but that's awesome. It's a really pardon my language, a really piss poor user experience design that we have, where we have the little Material UI chips where it has the the Istio logo, that little chip. If you click it, whenever you see one of those, you can click to run this, just like an ad hoc connectivity test. And it's a bad user experience design. We're abusing the heck out of toaster notifications. We're like yelling at you all the time. We're notifying. And moreover, who cares if Meshery, as the Meshery server, can talk to, like, to you, what's happening when you click on that button?
This one, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It gives me adapter successfully pinged.
Uh-huh. And so that's telling us that Istio is up and available, or what? Yeah, exact. That's my problem as well. Is it's just telling, I mean, you were going to get it right until I said that, but it was it's just telling us that Meshery server can talk to the Meshery Istio adapter.
Okay.
Great. That's really important to be able to do that when Meshery is having a problem, which is hopefully very, very not often. And so why are we shoving it in front of people's faces? I don't know, because we couldn't think of a better design. So clearly we need to like give that a little bit of thought, go hide that somewhere else. I mean, so, actually, seriously, if you get comfortable with the project, there's a ton of things to rework inside the UI. And one of those, like, it's a very simple answer here. The answer is take the chip, move the chip over to, if you go back into settings, and this is actually good for Vineeth and Dev and Anirudh and others to hear as well, is that in here, the second tab called Service Meshes, this drop down, if you were running all the other adapters, this is where you would connect to them.
Yeah.
And then they would each show up as their own small chip, like the Istio one in the right-hand corner.
Like all the ones that you were connected. So we do see a chip here if I'm connected to one of them.
So we're like, I don't know if we just didn't have anything more interesting to show users on the other page, but basically all those chips need to go away on the other pages and be consolidated back here. It's a really important chip. It's great to be able to, confirm my mesh system.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Okay, so what I see here is what I want to show up here, right?
Yeah, so good. So of the issue that you're working on, if you should be able to, if you can do me a favor, and on the managed service mesh lifecycle, that first card on the page that you're currently on, the plus sign, which again is like really unintuitive. But if you click on Istio 173, that'll go ahead and install Istio.
Okay.
It'll take a couple minutes. But the reason that we're doing it is because in that process, a new Kubernetes namespace will be created. And that's actually what we're looking at here, that namespace text field, that's Kubernetes namespace.
Okay.
the system that you just freshly installed, it has a namespace called default. There was nothing in it when we looked. And but now that we're installing Istio, there will be another namespace, and it will be called Istio-system. It'll be called Istio system. It's just Istio-system. So if you go back, if you click on the Meshery, if you go back to the main dashboard, if you click on the Meshery logo and or the dashboard icon in the upper right, so the left-hand side starts to change. It starts to say, well, oh, in fact, you're running a service mesh. It's this one, and the thing is that when you, so we've got Istio going. When you go back to the Istio menu item, well, yeah, and when you click on that, yeah, it still just shows you the default. So if you, yeah, it's unintelligent, right? Like, it would be nicer if we still want users to be able to type in any namespace that they want to create, but knowing that they already have an existing installation, the default behavior, or the ideal behavior, is that we would show them the fact that there's a namespace called Istio system, and we would select.
So it would come from the home page, what I need to list there, all of this.
Yeah, and actually the correct, see what the upper right-hand corner, the drop-down called where it has Istio system in the that table that you're on.
Yeah.
So so that's the namespace, and there's only one of them. The way you can retrieve that in the other UI in the management, is using the REST API, the endpoint. And if you want to just type this into your URL, into your address bar, you'll see it. Actually, if you would maybe go back to your the other tab that you were on, and after local, actually, no, this is so if you go to the other screen where you're running Meshery's server. Oh wait, actually, Anirudh and Dhruv and Dev, guys, should she be able to get to the REST API at port 3000 right now?
No, she has to use 9080.
Okay.
9080.
But you have it deployed, if I'm not wrong. You will use that. Yeah, 9081, my bad.
Totally. So okay, so in this address bar, after localhost 9081, you'd put /API /mesh. Yeah, you were going to get /scan. Yeah. Now, /scan. And now you'll actually get back some data, probably.
Oh yeah, I see it.
And so hidden in here is, if you search for namespace, you'll actually get a namespace, and next to it will be Istio system, like toward the top there.
Right here.
The first map, yeah. So basically that's it. Like, hey, that UI, that UI component, that text field, we want to make it more intelligent. There are examples of exactly how to do that in other UI components. But yeah, it's to like grab this JSON, grab all the instances of namespaces, and it's actually, now that I'm thinking of it, slightly more complex than that. But let's wait to talk about that.
Thinking of how to implement it.
Oh yeah, yeah. The example, one good example that you could use is when if you go back to Meshery, you go to settings, and you go back to the service meshes tab. Yeah, that drop down there, that one, that's an example of what we're trying to do.
Okay.
That's a good one. There's another, I think this is implemented by one contributor, whereas there's another example implemented by a different contributor. They should be really similar, but just in case one's easier than the next, if you go to performance menu item in the top of your, sorry, in the upper left-hand corner under the Meshery logo. Yeah. The second text box, the second, yeah, there you go. There's another example.
Okay.
Where you can both type in a valid, wait, I'm sorry, actually in this one, this is not a good example. It won't let you type in something.
Right.
Okay.
Hmm.
But Keenal, actually, so your soon-to-be expertise on this will be put to use on this page. You see the third input where it says URL to test?
Yeah.
Well, it's like Meshery knows that there are certain URLs that you're going to want to test because those are oftentimes going to be applications that you're running on Istio, on a service mesh. And that big long JSON that we looked at, it will have those URLs. It will have those endpoints.
Okay.
And so very soon it'll just like, it's a bad user experience here. Today, people have to like, you know,
type the whole thing. Right. Okay.
So,
I'll get started on it and
nice.
let you know, or Anirudh or anyone if I need help.
Totally. We just need this by tomorrow the same time. No.
My heart rate started going up very quickly.
I'm just not. Yeah, this is great. You did a ton. You're a Kubernetes whiz already. You've got you're doing Go. You're doing. Yeah, you bit off more than you thought you had to. This is good, and you're totally right. Anirudh is a great individual to ping. As a matter of fact, he said just the same in the chat box.
Okay.
Well, very good. If you don't mind.
Sorry, I couldn't get to review the PR last night. I went to sleep by that time.
I was surprised you were up, considering that you were East Coast.
Oh, yeah. But even if I were to do it, so I looked at it, and how would you review someone's PR? Like, you cannot see anything. So do you just look at the code and then decide if it's working or not?
Yeah, right, and that's actually why I just merged it, was because it was I realized like, this is sort of unfair, because like even I would have a hard time, or like it's kind of a pain in the butt to test. So Anirudh, Dhruv, Vineeth, I don't know that any of you have access to Netlify, but you're welcome to it. One thing that we're so for the UI, the website projects that we're running in the community, we have tried to make it a little easier to review PRs, where someone will go make this UI-based change, and you can read the code, but like you really also kind of want to see it because,
right,
you know, and every time a PR is submitted, a set of build workflows happen. And so like this example, the UI is built. So then why can't I just go access that build and check it out? Well, we need to reconfigure our workflows to make that easier, and just include a link, like right here after it's done a build, to just say, oh, here's that would be much more helpful to answer your question. In general, if you have a PR, really awesome GitHub CLI tool called GH. I would recommend getting familiar with this CLI tool. You can use it to check out the code from that pull request and then build the code.
Okay.
So this is ask this, if you would, let's put that as a meeting, as an agenda item for like the next Newcomers meeting. Like that's a great, how do we do, pull request reviews and building them.
And also, if I want to update the Meshery repo, do I need to exit out of my local host and then update and then open it again?
So like branching in Git. is that kind of the, like, after you've made a couple of changes to the code? Is
Yeah,
that
that I haven't made any change, and there has been changes on the original repo, and I have to pull it. But before I pull it, do I need to exit out of my server that's running, or can I like do a pull at the same time?
pull at the same time? Anirudh, do you want to interrupt me? Like, you should just be able to do a pull at the same time.
I didn't get the question.
If you're running make run UI dev, if you're actively running the UI, and you've been doing it for a week, and other people have made, new things have been merged into Meshery master.
Yeah.
If you go over and sync your, you go merge from sync from master, you don't have to stop and restart your UI server, because those file changes are going to be picked up and the UI will be rebuilt as is.
Yeah, that's right. You don't have to restart the UI server.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, first off, today is December 3rd, not 12th.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. Holy smokes. Yeah, that's my brother's birthday. I would Thanks.
And secondly, I'm having issues with DCO. When I checked the contributions guide and everything, they said you could activate like your signed commit by also like doing it on VS Code, like ticking the signed commit box on VS Code.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I did that, and I submitted a pull request for something I worked on, and apparently no commit. The commit was not signed.
I wonder if give it a you could even do a test PR if you want. Like I wonder if you maybe had made the commit before enabling that flag, because it won't do it retroactively.
No, I did it. I ticked the box before committing. And it didn't. And I also tried like I went back to fix the whatever, and there was this command let me check. I'm coming. Hold on. Yeah, so git commit amend dash amend sign off.
Right.
So I did that. It gave me a list of stuff, the pull request I made. And yeah, and also my name, at the end of the whole stuff. But then going back to GitHub, no changes or anything.
Okay, fair enough. Here, just to the extent that it helps, here's in my Visual Studio Code, the here's what I have checked. It's, which I'm sure is the same one that you have checked. It's always sign off.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, it's the same.
And really briefly, and then actually after this, I've been entirely rude to the other 4 people on the call who I was supposed to start a meeting with them 40 minutes or 36 minutes ago, and so let me answer this really quick, because so in your Tommy, is that PR in
No, layer 5, no, NG, layer 5 NG, that's the website. Yeah, layer 5, yeah. Layer 5, yeah.
Here we go. It's yeah, the Nice. Yeah, you can see that you're like. So for whatever reason, it didn't get signed off the first time, or it wasn't included, and so if it's kind of hidden. But here, where we're getting the failure, if you follow the details link, there's a specific set of these two commands here will get you going. Like these will retroactively.
Yeah, I did this. I did this stuff. It didn't work. Like I saw when I did this git commit amend sign off. I saw a bunch of stuff. Then like the commits I made and then my name at the end and my email address, and I pushed. But then coming back to GitHub, nothing.
Yeah, I know that you're okay. Very good. I don't know that push that you did made it, because this branch only has the one commit, and that push would actually show up as a second commit.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, on this particular, so while I do have to go on this particular, this is like the Layer5 repo. This is the only one where there's, well, I don't know if it's the only one. It's one of the few where there's leniency on this. So like, if we can't get it in this PR, it's not a huge deal. We can go forth, and then assuming your environment is configured going forward, like then you should be good. So it's, but yeah, I would just humor me if you would, and do these same commands one more time.
Okay. I did it a second time, and yeah, it told me. Let me read what it said. Hold on. It said no staged files found.
Okay. Do you want to? Can you do me a favor and drop that into the Slack? I think we can work this one out.
Okay.
Asynchronously. Just because I'm getting ugly looks from the other people on the call who've been waiting.
Okay.
But,
all right.
But fair enough. Yeah. No. I no doubt we'll get it. We'll get it. Like it's not. It's just not getting pushed to the right place. The push isn't going through. And yeah, that error, if you put it in any one of somebody will get you going. If they don't, I will.
Okay.
Don't let it slow you down. Cool. Okay. Well, Tommy, very good. Thanks a bunch. I'll see you guys all later.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Bye all. Bye.
Hi, Tommy.
Hi. Oh, hi.
I think we are the only ones left on the meeting. I don't know how
I
I
forgot to
managed to
cut because
become
I even
host.
thought that. What did you say?
I said I don't know how I managed to become host. Seriously, I just realized
You
I'm
have to be
host
the
and
one to end the
I
call. Yeah.
Okay.
I thought I'd left the call already.
Okay. I just end it then.
Yeah.